Live and lively. I'm extremely lively today. It's Bex here, Northbound Radio, 2:30 slot-ette on Instagram Live. Today I am talking to another Arenda Publishing published author, our fabulous Eve Smith. I'm going to bring her on any second now, but I've actually got anxiety. I'm so excited about talking about Eve's new novel. It's her debut novel. She's done an awful lot of research over the years, and it's attributed to a childhood misspent, if you like, of Edgar Allan Poe and Tales of the Unexpected. And her debut novel, The Waiting Rooms, is actually terrifyingly current, really timely release, and brilliant. And the people who have read it so far, I read one review that said, warning, you will be weeping by the end of the first chapter. Others who said, I couldn't put it down. It took 2 days. It's timely. It's terrifying. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Eve on live and she can tell us the brilliance, which obviously is Eve, with the concept. So Eve, you should now have a request to join me. Give it a clickette. And here she is. Oh my God.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. Can you hear me okay? I've got my very ancient headphones on.
Well, old is obviously the best because I can hear you perfectly.
Good.
Welcome on board. So I've been doing little bits of reading and dipping in and out. So
Fantastic.
Your debut novel is already available on Kindle, but for old-fashioned girls like me, I've got it pre-ordered for, I believe it's the 9th of July.
That's right. Thank you very much.
I'm very excited. So it's called The Waiting Rooms.
Yes.
I'll leave it to you to give us the premise, please.
Okay. So decades of spiraling drug resistance have unleashed a global antibiotic crisis. Ordinary infections are untreatable and a scratch from a pet can kill. A sacrifice is required to keep the majority safe. No one over 70 is allowed new antibiotics. The elderly are sent to
antibiotics, but not new ones. Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, they cannot have any new antibiotics, so only the old, ineffective ones. And if they get ill, they are sent to hospitals, which are nicknamed the waiting rooms, which are basically where no one ever gets well. And that's the premise.
Oh my God, that's so terrifying because pretty much when we think what's going on in the care homes now, with the coronavirus, that lots of people are not making it. And my sister is a nurse in the care home, so I know this firsthand. Yes, they are, to quote my sister, which is terrifying, they are dropping like flies.
No, I mean, it's just a shocker, really, because when I first came up with the idea, I mean, it was about 4 years ago, and I literally, it's quite an abhorrent concept. And not in my wildest dreams did I ever think that a situation would arise where we are actually, some hospitals and care homes, the staff are faced with horrendous choices.
Choices. So when did you come up with the concept? Was this sort of your love of the dark, really?
Well, yeah, well, there's two things. A, I do like quite dark things, and B, I'm a total nerd when it comes to research and science. I'm fascinated by science. I didn't do science I did languages actually, but I always loved science, and I came across a horrifying fact about antibiotic resistance, which basically said that 700,000 people are dying of antibiotic resistant infections every year now.
Holy cats.
Yes, that's now. And I just thought, how come we don't know about this? Like, there's a tiny bit in the news. And so that kind of really was what set me off. And I then started going right down my little research rabbit hole. And I uncovered a lot of very, very scary facts about how prevalent antibiotic resistance is. And that really was the start of the idea for the book. I just thought, I've got to write about this. This has got to be, I need a hook. And so, yes.
But how fascinating that as a language graduate, I'm assuming, you actually had possibly more of a passion or a later passion for the science. So how did you start your research? So you came across this, obviously, that fueled then your desire to write a story about it. Because because they say there's a book in all of us. I disagree. I think there's a story in all of us, but not all of us can tell it.
Oh, well, okay. I would agree with you on that. I genuinely believe everybody's got a great idea for story. So I guess my story starts back probably about 2014, 2013. I joined a creative writing group, and I just left my previous job, which was working for an environmental NGO where I worked with a lot of scientists. So that very much fueled my whole interest in everything. And I thought, actually, I quite fancy doing something a little bit different and more creative, because when I was a kid, I used to love writing stories. I used to bore all kinds of relatives with them. My mum used to sort of post them off with a Christmas card trying to get them out of the house. And so I joined this
writing. I think you're being modest, Mrs. Smith. But anyway, go on.
But yes, I thought there's a brilliant community up in Chipping Norton called Chippy Writers, and I joined that group, the Chippy Writers, that's based out of the theatre there. And I did it initially just to sort of give me a bit of a sort of brain space between finding, jobs. But when I joined it, I suddenly remembered how much I loved writing, and I just thought, hugely naively, oh, I know, I'll just write a novel. That's what I'll do this next year. And of course, what are we, about 6 years later, we're finally seeing the end result, because of course it's not that easy. But once I kind of commit to something, I think, okay, I'm going to do it. So even though I had plenty of knockbacks along the way, believe me, and lots of rejections, I fortunately had a very supportive family who stuck with me, and I just thought, I'm going to tell this story. I've got to do it.
Brilliant. So how did you mould the story? Because it starts in South Africa with, I think it's Kate, who decides to look for her birth mother. And
yes.
20 years after this sort of resistance to drugs has actually taken hold. Is that correct?
Yes, I do. I play around with time quite a bit. Okay. I quite like doing that. So what I've tried to do, there's 3 timelines, which sounds hugely complex, but the story actually makes it, quite easy to follow. So we have a pre-crisis, which is about 24 years beforehand. We have the crisis, and I haven't put years on it deliberately because I don't want people to think it's, out of date. But for the nerds, and I'm one of those, you can definitely work it out. So there's the crisis, which one might think is round about now. And then there's 20 years afterwards, which is when this law prohibiting the elderly from any antibiotics has been firmly established. And it's effectively, it's embedded in society, and everybody is working around it as if it were normal. And that's the kind of scary thing.
Sorry, I'm really fascinated how, as human beings, we would think that was an okay thing to do.
Well, this is where it gets a little bit interesting with parallels to what's going on now. Yes, so what happens in a crisis, as everybody is now seeing, all kinds of emergency powers are passed by the government with virtually no resistance, right? Because everybody's needing stuff to happen and everything is kind of collapsing around our ears. So what happens in this situation, and the reason my premise was that society would sacrifice the elderly, is because antibiotic prescriptions are like a U-shaped curve. Most of them go to the young and to the old. So a quarter of all prescriptions go to the over 75s. So my thinking was, and I will get back to your question, my thinking was, okay, so if we're in a situation where antibiotics simply don't work, and all the new ones, everybody's scurrying around trying to produce new ones, but what happens is they kind of become ineffective really quickly, which is what's happening now. Most shelf lives for new antibiotics are about a year or 2 at best. Then at some point, society has to make a choice, because it can't give the drugs to everybody. So based on usage...
So why can't it give the drugs to everybody? Is that quantity, or is that the immunity to it?
It's both. They can't produce enough, but most importantly of all, the more you give out a drug and the more it is used, the quicker bacteria or viruses will develop resistance. So the only way to control it and try and get all of these new drugs in the pipeline is to limit the use.
Are you advising Boris?
Am I what?
Advising Boris.
I think he might have a few other things on his plate, but you know what? After this, it was actually a priority for the government, and the previous CMO made it a massive priority, antibiotic resistance. But it's kind of a little bit fallen off at the moment, so I'm hoping it will come back on. Well, yeah, exactly. But interestingly, it is actually relevant to what's happening now, because sadly, a lot of the mortalities from the coronavirus are actually not the virus itself. It's from these, what they call the secondary infections, which are often bacterial, like pneumonia and sepsis. Well, those guys are the ones where we have huge resistance coming up through the ranks. So imagine a scenario where we have a viral pandemic like we're experiencing now.
And then bacteria slaps you in the face that's resistant to
Yes.
antibiotics.
Yes.
My assumption was, because I'll always go to kids, no, I can't get you antibiotics because it's viral, you'll be fine. But if they get something like tonsillitis, we'll just get antibiotics and then you'll be fine. But actually, it's not really that simple, is it?
No, it's not that simple at all. And the very scary thing is there's hardly any new antibiotics in development because they're so expensive to produce. They take years of research and development. And of course, they're now becoming ineffective really quickly. And so most of the big drug companies have pulled out of investing in them because they can't make any money on them. So we are literally sleepwalking towards this total crisis point because the economic model for antibiotics it's failed. It doesn't work anymore.
That's kind of terrifying. But would I be naive in thinking that there were quite a lot in production that may be coming up through the ranks anyway? They may not be relative to what we've got now as a disease, but we can hope that new ones have been being developed over the years and things are starting to come through, because presumably development just keeps going. Well,
that's the scary thing. There's so they have what they call, I'm not I am not an expert in medicine or pharmaceuticals by any point, but there's different classes of antibiotics, and those classes have different levels of resistance already, microbial resistance. And what's happened, there's been no new class of antibiotics invented since the late 80s. So we are using up all of our current arsenal of drugs. We are literally, each one, they're still effective against a lot of diseases, but certain really resistant bacteria or viruses, like some of the pneumonia and the sepsis bugs, they are resistant to multiple drugs, and we do not have others in the pipeline.
So it's the mutations, isn't it? That's when the resistance starts to happen, when different mutations develop and whatever the bugs do, where they cross-contaminate, however it works.
That's right.
The question would be, what about our immunity? Natural immunity. Now, I'm a bit of oh, hello, Isabel. I'm a bit of a, I guess, draconian mum, because I've got two boys. One of them had antibiotics for the first time when he had a tooth infection at the age of 14, for the first time. And the other one is 15 and has never had antibiotics. And they're so obsessed with tomatoes because I said tomatoes are a cure-all. Tomatoes, just eat tomatoes. Do they eat tomatoes morning, noon and night? They're going to look like tomatoes, frankly. You know that child in that advert that said, "Mummy, I want to be a tomato." Well, there you are. I have two tomatoes.
Well, you've done well.
But I did watch an awful lot of parents, and listen, parents have got to do what works for them and what gets them through. I do never judge people's parenting. But I watched a lot of parents immediately medicate their kids if there was something they didn't understand.
Yes.
So there will be people with strong immune systems who can maybe work through some of these things. But can we work through bacterias without antibiotic intervention? Viruses, yes, we can. But bacterias, can we? Would you know?
Well, I think it's entirely dependent on the disease. I mean, I think one of the problems, particularly with young kids, and believe me, I have this too, because when you've got a baby, you just feel, you feel so powerless. And my daughter had antibiotics in 9 months. I really wish she hadn't now. And part of the problem was people mistaking viruses for, like, chest cough infections, thinking they're bacterial, and they weren't. They're not. A lot of the time they're viral, and I think that whole thinking has changed now. I really notice it. If I go to the doctors, there's lots of notices up about it. I talk to other young mums. They simply are not prescribed as much as they were. So
that's great to hear.
I think it's really, there has been a strong education message about that. And so you're right, we do have a natural immunity against a lot of diseases, but the more, on the whole, we consume antibiotics, if we don't consume them responsibly, I was terrible. I never used to finish a course. Of course, that has changed because I hate taking tablets. I am a prime candidate for resistance. Like, really, I am, because I didn't used to finish the courses. So if you're responsible and you take them responsibly and you're taking them for the right things in the right way, fine. But it's all these other situations where people are just maybe not finishing the course, maybe taking them when they don't need to take them. And then, of course, the other thing, which I had no idea about, is you can consume antibiotics through your food, because so much is used in farming. And I had no idea about that.
Oh, yeah, no, that I did know. Hormones and antibiotics.
Oof.
Because the chicken breast this big, come on. They're packed full of hormones, they're packed full of antibiotics. The reason we had mad cow disease was because bits of animal went back into the food chain for the cow in their pellets, and they're vegetarian.
Yeah, I think it's going to get very interesting. It's funny because we have, my husband's aunt lives in California, and there they have labeling, because of course the States is horrific for antibiotic use. Like, the EU has got good regulation around it, and I really hope the UK sticks with that. Whereas the US, they are still stuffing their animals full of antibiotics for growth and in case they get ill. So California has chicken in the supermarket, and it's labeled antibiotic-free chicken. I'd never seen that before, because it's such a problem over there. And I think that packaging
I certainly wouldn't buy one that didn't say that.
Yeah, I know. So, it's leaching in through all kind, pesticides and the use on crops and animals. It's kind of all around us. So it needs a holistic approach, really.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember, I partly grew up on a farm, and there was, remember CJD, that it got into the humans, and a lot of people died a horrendous death. But we had mad cow disease in the 70s on our farm.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Oh,
I didn't know it was a rat then.
Yeah, and you used to have to shoot the cow, but once the abattoir came to take the cow away, who knows where it went? And it went back in the food chain.
Yeah.
Until the mutations of mad cow disease had the ability to cross the species.
Yeah.
And that's when we had the huge problems. But when CJD was in humans and everyone thought mad cow disease was a new thing, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Anyway, so back to the book, because I can't wait for mine to turn up, but I'm not succumbing. That's such a cool cover.
Oh no, I just love that cover. So I'm just going to have to show that again. Nothing to do with me.
Yeah, I made a nice little picture of you with your cover this morning.
Thank you very much, Mark Swan.
It was rather nice, wasn't it? And that picture, is that your dog you have now in the picture I used in the Soch?
Yeah, gosh, she's a naughty thing, she is, but she is keeping us sane. Yeah.
She's the one who they accidentally forgot to tell you has got a whole lot of husky going on.
And a significant deer habit.
Yeah.
Yes.
You think, where's she gone?
Oh, yeah, trackers are the way forward.
So you wrote your book.
Yes.
And the premise is incredible. So I can't actually believe that people didn't go, yeah, I'm having a bit of that. So how did you come across Karen? Because Karen Sullivan of Arenda Books, who is an angel in book publishing, because I've already had Louise Beach on here, also an Arenda girl.
Yeah.
And I might just go through all the Arenda people.
You should. They're all wonderful.
Just get everybody on.
Well, Karen, what a wonderful lady she really is. So yes, that was last summer. So it was a long road to there. Because
so go from when you finished your manuscript, so pre-editorial, not editorial, pre-editing and did you go to the Literary Society? Is that what one does and says, do you think this is a viable story?
No, not at all. Well, I was still in the book group at that point, so I was using feedback from them. It was actually really useful. We had a fantastic guy called Alan Pollock, who was a playwright actually, and he was kind of like a mentor for me, because I never did any formal writing course or anything. It was really doing by learning. So I'd had the idea literally in 2015, I think was the first time. And I'd been playing around with a different book at that point, which was an environmental idea. And I knew I was onto something because I was in contact with an agent, and I sent just the premise of the book to her. And I think I'd written the first 3 chapters, and she just went, okay, I'm interested in that. Go write it.
Brilliant.
So it was really nice because actually it's very lonely, and it's a huge risk trying to write a book. You've got no idea if you're just wasting your time and your family's, and you think, oh my God, I could be earning so much more money if I was doing something a bit more useful and practical. But anyway,
you wouldn't feel so rewarded.
Well, there we go. Yes, hopefully. Yes. So so I wrote the book, and my issue is I'm very impatient. And I just thought, I want to get it out. And I had this ridiculous fear, and I think a lot of new authors have this, that somebody else would have exactly the same idea as me, and that they would get in first if I didn't get it.
It happens, though. It really does.
It does happen sometimes. But if I think back to it now, I think, how many people really would have kind of had that bizarre cross of antibiotic resistance and the elderly people and prescriptions? But at the time, you're just so focused on it. So I just banged it out there, probably too early when I'd got a first draft. And the bottom line is it wasn't good enough. So I had interest from several agents they wanted the full manuscript, because the way it goes is you send it out, you send your first 3 chapters off, then you basically don't hear anything for many weeks normally. And I knew again, I thought, I'm onto something, because I literally got a response from a big agent the next day saying, send me the book. But then, and then you get all excited, and then they come back and say, no, sorry, not for me. And of course, I'd sent out something that wasn't good enough. But I am quite sort of persistent. So I thought, okay, I know it's just I've not written it well enough. So I'm going to go back and have a look. So I did a big re-edit. And it was that edit I sent off to the Bridport Prize first novel competition. Okay. And I really recommend that for any writers. You've got, it's so good. It's called the Bridport Prize, and they run, and there's lots of them. There's the Bath and the Bristol Prize. There's all these different novel competitions that you can enter, and you might as well, because it doesn't cost you anything. Right. And if you get shortlisted, or indeed if you win, it's obviously massively helpful. And so I just sent it off, and I just thought, oh, probably won't hear anything. And then I got an email, it went into my junk. That's another big tip.
No.
Watch your junk. Watch your junk folder, for goodness sake. I do wonder how many things I've lost in my junk folder, but anyway. And it said, congratulations, you've been longlisted. So that was a big woo-woo. And then I got shortlisted. And the way that prize works is there's an overall winner, a second, and then there's 3 in the final. And I was one of the 3 in the final. So it was great, because it just gives you a boost in your confidence. You think, okay, I'm definitely onto something now. So then I resubmitted to agents, and I had a little dance with a couple. But in the end, I met Harry Illingworth at DHH, who was just lovely. And he basically signed me. And it was thanks to him, really, that I met Karen, because when you've got an agent, this is why I think I really respect people that do self-publishing. That is a tough gig, and you can make things happen quicker that way. But I had decided I wanted to hang out for the traditional route because I wanted people to work with me on the writing and help push me. I find it quite a lonely business. I wanted to work with somebody. And Harry had already pushed me. So I did some edits with Harry. He suggested some things which were brilliant. And then he pitched it out to publishers, which is another massively nail-biting time. And he knew Karen, obviously. And fortunately for me, she liked it. And so she signed me last summer, and I was just over the moon, really was. So yeah, it's quite a good.
Yes, she is pretty fantastic.
It's amazing.
Yeah, but I think everybody who works with Karen is family.
Yeah. Yes, it feels like that. The whole Arenda gang, it just feels, I'm not even most of them yet. It's all been virtual, of course. But they're so supportive. They're really, and all the bloggers are wonderful, you know, it's brilliant.
I was just going to ask about the bloggers. So you've got the ones I know anyway, Anne, Victoria and Lizzie. Have they all read your book and come back with their synopsis?
Yes, so what's going to happen is I'm learning about all of this because I had no idea how the whole, getting it out into the real world for a book works. And my God, it's a bit more complicated than I thought. So because the paperback isn't out until July, the big blog tour will happen around that date and in the build up to that date.
Well, let's hope it's not remote.
Well, I know. Who knows what will be happening by then?
I'll come.
Oh, please do. Please do. Well, July the 9th is the date, so get that in your diaries.
Well, I've cancelled my holiday, so I might as well put some things in the diary.
Yes, absolutely. And yes, and so what she then decided is to release the ebook first. And so there's trade proofs, which is what this is. That's a trade proof. That gets produced. That was produced at the end of January, and that gets sent out to all the bloggers and ultimately to people in press and media. And then you just gradually get a drip feed of people who read and then review it. So some bloggers have already posted reviews, which has been wonderful. And others, I believe, are going to be part of this big push just before the paperback publication. But obviously the ebook is out now. And so it's just so wonderful that it's out there because I'm actually seeing, reviews and comments from, proper readers. Even
and
people that
they've been really lovely. They've been
amazing.
The comments are all like, wow.
Yes,
I think anything. I mean, I think the worst one I read was 9.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm sure I've got it coming to me. If I go on promotion or something, I'm going to get some serious numbers. But I think the hardest thing for people actually has been reading it during a pandemic because, as we sort of touched on earlier, completely by coincidence, a lot of the scenarios in the book are actually coming true, which is something I would never have wished for. But it makes it quite uncomfortable. But at the same time, I think in a bizarre way, it's reassuring because there is a sort of context and resolution in the book, which we don't have yet in coronavirus.
Because I keep thinking about 1984, George Orwell, and how that was supposed to be a prediction.
Yes.
And you probably didn't consider yours as a prediction, and whichever way you look at it, it's a prediction because we're right in the middle of it.
There was a hilarious tweet by a lady who just said, I am deeply suspicious of @Eve C. Smith. I think it was Leah. And I was like, I'm very sorry. I did write this a long time ago. No, in a really nice way.
Yeah, because I just started it 2 weeks ago, got my deal, got it published, got it edited, got my cover design.
It's only that easy, That's probably what I thought when I started my creative writing course, and I've the shells have come off the eyes since then.
I love the deeply suspicious though. Can't someone just go, blimey, that's a bit close to home. That's fantastic. But there's always got to be someone who's got to be a conspiracy theorist.
Oh, yes.
My favourite one was the one who went, well, Boris clearly wasn't ill. Perfect timing for a PR campaign. What?
Yeah.
What? I'm just going to pretend to be really ill and go into intensive care just so that I can get... Yeah, his name's already out there. We know him.
Yeah, I know.
And he is already Prime Minister, whether we like it or whether we don't. So
I know. There's always got to be a scapegoat. That's another thing I think about crises, and I deal with that a bit in the book as well. there's always got to be a scapegoat. Like, it's not enough that it's a disease and that it's come out of nowhere and that no one could have predicted it. Somebody needs somebody to blame. And so you end up with this sort of massive, as far as I'm concerned, distraction, because you know what, let's just try and get on with getting past this and solving it and getting a vaccine, and you know, we can do the blame game later.
Absolutely, because you see, I've got this theory that Boris is Winston Churchill.
He'd certainly like to be.
Well, but he's the academic that didn't want the job. He got the job that nobody else wanted. He gets into the job and everybody hates him and nobody thinks he can do it and nobody supports him. He will do his best because he's all we've got. It may not be brilliant, but he will do his best. And then at the end, he'll either resign or be sacked. There we go, Winston Churchill. And this is our World War II. No,
I think you're right. And I also think he might have modelled a couple of his little speeches on old Winston as well. I think he's a massive
his comedy, Winston Churchill's comic timing was so genius. And dear God, Boris, no.
Don't go there.
No, not the anecdotes and not the quips. It's not timely. Has to stay away from it. So how did you so your I guess your leading lady is Kate in the book.
Yes, the nurse.
So Kate's a nurse. Can you tell us a little more without too many spoilers?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Kate, she is a nurse in one of the waiting rooms, so i.e. the hospitals which are effectively palliative care. And she's a very caring nurse. She really does do the best for her patients that she can, and she has a lot of empathy. But just at the start of the book, we learn that her mother has died. And we then find out that actually she was adopted, and that the sort of.
And she's in South Africa, Kate, right?
No, she's in England. That will we get on to South Africa. That's the sort of past and future piece. So she's in the UK. She's in a hospital, effectively, but she then learns about. She always knew that she was adopted, but her adopted mother tells her to search for her birth mother before it's too late. On her sort of deathbed, as it were. So Kate starts this search for her birth mother, and that leads her to uncover a lot of dark secrets about not just her birth mother, but her birth father as well. And that really is the engine of the story through the book, because the book is set, you know, during a crisis and during a pandemic, in fact, multiple pandemics. That happens. But actually, the main thrust of the story is actually about mothers and daughters, you know, love, death, loss, you know, the normal themes. But it's Kate's story and this search that brings her into contact with our other characters, and that is the bridge, really.
Okay. I do have to say that Karen just came on and said this book is great. I read it just after it came out.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, thanks, Karen. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thanks for joining us. So Kate is in this. I was going to ask a question. I completely threw myself. So these people who are in the palliative care, the over 70s, they're already ill.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So you spend most of your.
Be saved.
That's right. That's right. So basically, once you hit a certain age, in fact, everybody now, because people have lived through an antibiotic crisis when there were no drugs for anyone, and only now are there drugs for people that are under 70, the whole of society is obsessed with infection control. And this is what will be interesting when we come out of coronavirus too. So literally in the book, and this is why it got very spooky, it's very early on in the book, we have a scene where Kate, the nurse, meets some family relatives of one of her patients. And, you know, the quote is, you know, we don't shake hands. I hold up my palm in the now customary greeting. No one touches each other's hands anymore, not unless they're intimate. And this is the reality of life after this crisis, is that there is, particularly, you know, Kate is a mother herself, and she's obsessive about keeping her daughter safe. Everything is about, you know, sterilized surfaces. You take a mask with you in case there's, you know, an outbreak.
Even after?
Yes, even after, even 20 years after, because the threat of new resistant diseases always present. So even for people that qualify for the drugs, you spend your whole time not wanting to get ill. And that's the thing. And of course, that's accentuated as you get closer to what is called cutoff, which is when you turn 70 and you are no longer eligible for drugs. So there is an elderly character in the book called Lily who is approaching cutoff, and she literally guides her life and her world around trying to stay safe and well and away from dangerous infection. And the home that she is in is...
So she's obsessive then, presumably.
Yeah, she's quite obsessive, and she's in a care home, a very nice care home, which has leading edge equipment, medical equipment, the kind of stuff that is being talked about now, wearable patches, all kinds of stuff to monitor her health, to pick up the first
scary that you've clairvoyanted all this, you know.
Yes, it is a little bit disturbing to me too, but I like to think it's just a logical extension of what would happen. I just never expected anything like this to happen now.
It's just
I just hope that it might advance the cause and get governments to think a bit harder about getting antibiotic resistance under control, because otherwise we're in for a massive shocker.
Well, I think given what you said about antibiotics, I think the massive shocker, inverted commas, is an inevitability.
Yes, and that is the other thing I have to confess to, because I am such a research nerd. Everything that I've written that builds up to the crisis, virtually everything is based on fact. And one of the big points I wanted to make is that I think as a population, we are pretty poor at dealing with massive global issues. You know, we're good at the here and now. Very apparent, you know, we're good at the here and now, we're good at our instant needs. But when it comes to addressing something that seems a little bit distant, whether it be climate change or, you know, pandemic, to be fair, a pandemic just came out of nowhere, but we're not good. And the point I wanted to make in the book, by showing you literally see the progression from 25 years out to 15 years out to 5 years out, and then you hit crisis. You see that all the signs were there. The scientists were going, woo, got a problem, but no one took any notice in power. And so you see this slide, and it's like a plane crash in slow motion. And so then you hit the crisis. And then after the crisis, of course, everybody's scrabbling around trying to put in all the things that they should have put in before. And I really wanted to make that point, because you can't wait for something to hit like this. You've got to act before. So, yeah.
Does this not strike you as completely parallel to terrorism? Oh, yes, he was on the list. Yes, we knew he was a risk. Yes, oh, yes. He's thrown a plane into the Twin Towers. Yeah, well, we're not really surprised. I mean, it's a similar thing, isn't it? It's, as you're saying, that we may be aware of these things and we may anticipate them, but we do nothing.
Yeah, it's very hard to get different countries to work together. And I have huge sympathy for an organization like the World Health Organization that I think do an amazing job, where they're literally trying to coordinate multiple different bodies to do the same thing. And that's the whole point, and to put in place processes. So, yeah, I don't really know what the solution is.
Money back yet?
I just couldn't even engage in any social media about that, because I was so incensed. And I just thought, it's the kind of thing where you literally couldn't put it in a book, because if you put that in a book, people would be going, oh, don't be silly. That's just so not realistic. I mean, quite a lot of what's been going on falls into that category. So yeah, it's kind of hard making fiction stranger than fact at the moment.
Well, yes, I suspect it probably is. But the thing that came out of that is the kind of the word on the street, social media to you and I, is that Donald Trump is just a dictator. And it doesn't really look like whomever is advising him has actually got any pull.
No, I can't even go there, because it becomes it's such a rabbit hole that I think I kind of don't engage on any of that, because it's just, you can just get drawn your whole life into that piece. So I'm quite careful. I don't get drawn into any political stuff on social media. I just get, I want to stick to what I care about. Yeah, exactly, because fortunately they will come and go, hopefully. Go on. Go with me.
Yes. So now that this book is done, have your family read it?
Yes. Now, it was quite funny. My friends kept saying to me, "So, has your husband read it?" And I went, before it got into sort of this, I keep doing that 10 times. So,
Yeah,
show
you
it.
keep doing it as much as
Yay,
you
look at that.
like. Do it
The
as
mugs.
much as you
Thank you,
like.
Karen. Yes, my husband. I have one alpha reader, called Bill. And he has read everything through all kinds of edits, and he's been brilliant because he is brutally honest with me. And he tries to murder my characters if he doesn't think they're up to scratch. He's hilarious. He
And do you
got rid of.
listen?
I did, yeah. No, there was a son originally in this, and unfortunately he had to go. So he was killed off, and I'm glad he was, actually, because he wasn't up to much. So he went, and but I didn't give it to any of my close family or friends because I felt I had to get it to a point where it was ready, and I wanted them to read the finished piece, really. And it's very unfair, I think, to give a book to your partner and ask them to comment, because they're doomed, right? Whatever they say, because if they say, "I like it, but no, 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 no," then they're going to get it in the neck. And then if they go, "I love it," I'd probably say, "Well, you would say that." So basically, it's very. I don't put that on my partner, bless him, or my husband, Dave, but he did read it. So as soon as I got my trade proofs, I gave the first one to him, and I gave the second one to Bill, my alpha reader. And I was really happy about that. So yes, they have. And if my daughters can get back into reading, I would give it to the older one. But she's,
How old are the girls?
14 and 12. The older one would like it. Yes, the problem is she's not reading, but I would like her to read it because quite a few of the mother-daughter tension scenes are based on us. She'd probably recognise a couple of moments.
Yes, possibly. I have one of my very good friends has a son the same age as my oldest son. He's 17, and he and I get chatting sometimes, and he loves the same sort of books I do. So when it comes to Christmas, I always give him a book, and he will always enjoy it. And I'm thinking that this Christmas your book might be the one.
Ooh, well, thank you. Thank you.
Well, because he would engage with it, because he's a voracious reader, but he loves a bit of the fantastic, which until this became a reality, it was just a fantastic concept, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think you should bully your girls into reading it, especially the one who previously did. So if I'd been in your shoes and I were writing a manuscript for a book, I want people to read it as I went. Were you tempted to do that? Look, I've done a chapter. What do you think?
I sent off bunches of chapters to Bill. So I did, because I wanted to get feedback. And so he read several versions because some people ask me how many edits I've done of this one, and literally, thankfully, I didn't keep count. Otherwise, I think I'd sort of, be so utterly depressed, and I'd probably depress anybody that asked me. So,
well, you
but
won't
lots,
be depressed now because you're published.
Lots. Never stop editing. So yes, I did. I used to send off bundles of chapters so that he could read it, and because I think it's important to send quite a few off because it's about keeping up the pace and the tension. And so he literally got all of that early on. But other than him, I did use, I forgot to say actually, who was incredibly helpful. I approached Cornerstones, who are a literary agency, and who you can pay for services. You can pay for either editorial services or other services. And they allocated me in what they call an industry mentor. So I got Jonathan Ayers, who works at Bloomsbury, and he was my industry mentor, which basically meant I got a chunk of his time to read the version that I had then. And he gave me feedback on it, because it is hard when you're starting out, because you don't get industry insights unless you are on a proper course. Which I was not, or doing a degree in creative writing or something. And so I figured, actually, it's worth me doing this because I don't know what I don't know. And it turned out I didn't know quite a lot, actually. On grammar, I was horrified. I was on languages.
Oh, well, yes.
And I kept discovering things I didn't know about the English grammar. I'm still learning. So anyway, so Jonathan was brilliant. And not only did he give me feedback, but more importantly, he really gave me a lot of encouragement. Because you go through highs and lows. You get high and then you get somebody interested and then they go, oh, actually, no. And so it's kind of like this. It's a total roller coaster.
Is it politic when someone says, I'm interested? Great. When they come back and go, actually, no. Is it politic to go, well, why not? Because they'd said yes originally.
You can, most of the time, there was this one guy, this one agent, I've forgotten his name, who ran this hilarious seminar. It's not very hilarious, in a kind of black humor way, called The 5 Stages of Rejection. Yeah, it was very black. So for an aspiring author, this was dark humor. There are 5 stages of rejection. And the positive I drew was that I got to the point where I was probably on level 5 of rejection, where people are reading and engaging with a manuscript. They're actually even asking you to do an edit, but they haven't committed. And so what I got, and I read a brilliant book, I've got it here somewhere actually, called On Writing by Stephen King. And it's a hilarious book as well. He talks about, it's like an autobiography, and then just some very simple premises about writing. And I read that very early on when I was just starting out. And he said, always listen to your feedback. It doesn't mean that you do exactly what, they are saying, fix it this way, but you must listen to it. And he used to stick his rejection notes up on a pin board. He had a pin board, and he was working in a laundry at the time. So he would be working in laundry, doing all this stuff and busy writing. And then he said, I knew I was getting somewhere where I didn't just, first of all, you don't hear anything. That's the first stage of rejection. You get nothing back. Then I knew I was getting somewhere.
Rude.
I know, but I get it. They get hundreds of submissions. They just don't have time. So then, or you just get a standard thanks, but no, it's a generic response. Then if you get a sentence back, that's something. So you're getting somewhere when you get a paragraph back, and then you've got to, the trick is working out what it actually means, because behind each word they are trying to get at something, and you've got to try and figure it out. It's a bit like a puzzle. So I really did listen. I got lots of different feedback, and it was always helpful. And I might not have done the exact suggestion, and that carries on actually. When you get an agent and they're giving you edits to do, and then you get your publisher, and Karen gave me structural edits, and then then we get on to copy edits and everything. So it keeps coming.
With it all? Did you feel drunk with it all, or did it help?
With what? When I got signed, you mean?
When everybody's giving you this drunk, constructive, yes, always drunk, this constructive feedback, and it sounded like it was coming at you from all angles, from Jonathan to Bill to Karen. And did you feel a little overwhelmed? No,
gosh, I'd have given anything to feel overwhelmed, because I've made it sound like it all happened in a short amount of time, but it didn't. It happened over weeks and months. And so for me, getting feedback was a real bonus, even if it was a no, because it's an engagement and it gives you a clue as to how you can get better. So no, it kind of was quite spread out. But I most of the time with this book, I had one person that was interested, and you only need one, right? Yeah. That's what my husband always said to me. He said, you only need one, you only need one agent, and you only need one publisher. And I would really say that to writers, just keep going. You only need one.
Dave's Law.
Yeah, Dave's Law. He's listening to this somewhere.
Dave's Law. So we haven't got very much time left, because Instagram only.
Oh my goodness!
And we've been guessing. But I want to know. So a couple of things I want to know.
Yes.
Do you remember the day that Karen rang you and went, "I'm publishing"? Do you remember how you felt? I'm sure you felt fantastic.
Yes, it was a definite squealer. Harry, bless him, I think he's got used to my sort of middle-aged squeals down the phone. I think he rang me. So yes, it was a massive shriek and a squeal that I think frightened the dog and everyone else in the house. So it was, and I'll be honest with you, it was huge excitement, and it was massive relief, because I know that, I've been to the various courses, only 1 in 3, once you've got an agent, you think, oh, great. Only 1 in 3 manuscripts makes it at that point with a publisher. So there was a very real possibility that this book would never have come to light, right? If Karen hadn't taken it.
Well, that would have been a tragedy.
No one else had taken it. It would never, literally, all of this would have happened, and I'd have been sitting there on this manuscript going, I'm forever grateful. So actually relief, I think, was the biggest emotion, as well as absolute joy. Yes.
Brilliant. And final question.
Oh yes.
Have you got a new novel concept? Are you already writing one? Have you hatched one?
Yes,
Are
yes,
we
I did.
allowed to know?
What can I say? Yes, I already had this concept when I was talking to Karen. So I'm kind of issue led, as you may have gathered. So antibiotic
Yeah.
resistance was the hook. So I think the next one I can say, I will be into the field of genetics. I'm very interested in what's going on in genetic engineering. And so I have found hopefully, I think it's quite good. Karen likes it and Carrie likes it. So hopefully everyone else will love it. I found quite an interesting hook in the realm of genetics. So that is what I am trying to get my first draft out right now. I'm probably a third of the way through.
Okay, and how much research has this one taken?
A lot, and I'm a real, as you know, I just said I'm a nerd. I can go down many, many rabbit holes and not come out for a while, so I've got to get a bit better at that. So yes, I've done a lot of research, and around here, I'm so lucky in Oxford, you can go and listen to amazing experts talk for free at science events that are put on in order to encourage engagement. So you get loads of opportunities to talk to people who really know about what they're doing, as opposed to me.
Brilliant. So I noticed that our friend Mel Byron has joined, and I spoke to Mel the other day because she's an expert in old movies, and I thought she'd enjoy your talk because you grew up on Edgar Allan Poe and all those kind of movies, didn't you?
Yes.
Do you have any real faves?
Oh gosh, I loved The Pit and the Pendulum. I used to watch those literally double bills, black night. It was Friday night, black and white, horror double bills. Yeah, and The Pit and the Pendulum scared the what's it out of me.
Yes, I think I've seen it, but I can remember the name. I may have just read it. I'm not sure if I saw it, because when I was talking to Mel, I was very much saying I was Christopher what's his
Christopher Lee name? Oh yes, what a man.
Him and Peter Cushing, they'll never ever be anyone as good as them again. But so you're I'm saying this because Mel joined quite late, just saying that your love of the darkness really, and things that are kind of strange and a bit dystopian, I suppose, has come from your growing up and you're enjoying these dark and dismal movies.
Yeah, that good old horrors. And then Tales of the Unexpected was a big one. Do you remember that? Unbelievable. Roald Dahl. That frightened me more than the horrors, because the horrors had like a little exit door that most of the time something was in there that couldn't possibly really happen. And so it was titillating, whereas the Tales of the Unexpected actually were truly haunting, and I remember having a couple of nightmares after those, but it didn't put me off. And my sister and I used to watch it. I remember just being fascinated by the titles. Do you remember there was that woman dancing in the fire, like a sort of tarot card? Yes. Yeah, so I loved that. Was a big one.
Do you remember a favourite story, a favourite Tales of the Unexpected? I've got two.
Oh gosh, well, the one that frightened me most, and it has kind of stayed with me, was the one which was actually the most out there, because there was only a couple where it actually couldn't have happened. And it was about, there were these bad people that weren't actually human, and the only way you could tell they were replicas of everyone else walking around was that they got really bad teeth, which sounds hysterical, but at the time it was so frightening because you couldn't tell who was good and who was bad. And I just remember them smiling, having jagged black teeth, and it really gave me a whole thing about teeth for a while.
I don't remember that one. I remember who's married to Prunella Scales. What's his name?
Oh, Timothy West.
Right. He turned into a bee. Do you remember that?
I can't remember that.
Oh, because he was obsessed with bees, and I can't really remember the story. And he went, but in the end, he grew wings because he started to speak, and he buzzed at the end of each word as "oh God," and so he basically became possessed by bees.
Oh Lord!
Or a bee. And the other one I remember was this man with this incredible tattoo on his back. Do you remember that one?
No.
And so I'm winging it a bit here because I can't completely remember, but he had this incredible tattoo on his back, and he got involved with somebody, friendly with somebody who was really quite mesmerized by this tattoo. And then the last thing I remember is the tattoo was in a frame above the fireplace.
Oh, yes, he always did that horrible twist. It's like the boarding house one. Do you remember? There was a lovely old lady at a boarding house
No,
and
I
sort of
don't. Go on.
luring people in. And I'm trying to remember how it ends. I think she ends up she ends up stuffing them. She's got all these stuffed animals around her living room and he's admiring them. And then the next thing is he can't move and she's put some drug in his tea and she takes him upstairs. And then there's all these other previous lodgers that are stuffed in the room.
I think I remember this. They should bring back Tales of the Unexpected.
I think they should, absolutely. Or they are slightly terrifying.
I wonder Mel is part and parcel of Talking Pictures, you know, the channel?
Oh, wow, okay.
She does the podcast, actually.
Okay.
I wonder if maybe Tales of the Unexpected might well be on there, because they do have series on there.
Yes,
so,
and I did see something about it on Amazon, actually. I did see when I was I was trying to find the titles to remind myself of it, there was something on there.
Oh, yeah, we should watch it again. Anyway, it's been such a pleasure.
Thank you, Bex.
And I hope that you get to do your book launch for The Waiting Rooms live in real time with real people. If
Thank you very much.
On Facebook,
yes,
chuck us an invite. I'll be there with
definitely. Most definitely.
That. And
yes.
I will feed back to you when I've had your book in July.
Please do.
Let you know what I think. Oh no, I'm really excited about it. I'm very confident it's going to be fantastic. And enjoy isolation, which in the country is probably a lot nicer than it is here in London. And thank you very, very much for joining us. And you are at Eve Smith Author on Twitter.
Yes, at Eve C. Eve Smith on Twitter. Yeah.
Eve C. Smith on Twitter. And what are you on Instagram?
Eve Smith Author, and I've got a website which has got loads of stuff about the book and what inspired it and more nerdy facts about the issues.
And that's www.evesmithauthor.com. Brilliant. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. Thank you so much. And Alison, just give her away because we've finished now, Alison. But do listen back, Alison, because I think you'll really enjoy this.
Oh, thanks so much, Bex. Really lovely to talk to you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you. And
okay.